Hey y'all, welcome to Paige's Perspective, where I help you find your inner strength to cope with life. Sometimes my episodes reflect something I need to hear or make part of my personal healing, growing, personal development, recovery, whatever you want to call it, journey. And today I want to discuss something people may experience in their own journey that isn't really discussed enough. You know, I've had to do a lot of reflecting lately. Story of my life. I read a lot about abuse, betrayal, trauma, triggers, the things many spouses of alcoholics and addicts go through. And I began noticing a shift in myself. I was becoming concerned that I was becoming something I'm not, or becoming someone I help others, get away from. I'm very introspective and try to be aware of what I say and do. I often feel afraid of harming others instead of helping them. And I fear I will be the mom I try so hard not to be. I fear I will be the spouse I try so hard not to be. I overthink like crazy sometimes when it comes to these feelings, but today I want to discuss the pendulum swing in healing. That moment when you go from being quiet, careful, and over-accommodating, walking on eggshells, to suddenly not giving a single damn what anyone thinks. You may have spent years shrinking yourself to stay safe. So when you start finding your voice again, it can swing too far the other way. You start to speak louder, you draw harder lines, you start using a tone that might feel too sharp. You might be blunt when you used to be careful and mindful. And honestly, that swing is sometimes necessary. Spending years being dismissed, when we finally have a voice, sometimes we push too far to the other side, and it's normal, it's common, it's okay. The scary part is it feels uncomfortable, and you really begin to question your motives and intentions, like, am I trying to control, or is this just new territory? This is partly why going through betrayal trauma kind of sucks. I mean, it sucks in general, but we really begin questioning ourselves even when we begin to take action or live by our values. We fear so much we are harming others or trying to control others, when in reality, we're trying to find our voice again. It may come off harsh. It may make others uncomfortable, and that's okay. We need to own it. We need to learn from it, and we need to reflect on it. I work with a lot of spouses, and many have asked, am I the abuser? Am I the narcissist? Sometimes it feels that way for different reasons. Maybe you have a partner who is telling you this, or maybe you're just super introspective and you want to find your part in things so that you can fix or rationalize it. But abuse is about power and healing is about regulation. So you might express yourself strongly or even aggressively sometimes, but the intention and repair afterward reveal everything. So if you can circle back and say, ooh, I got reactive there and I don't like how that felt, you're not in the abusive cycle. You're in a repair cycle. Let's talk about the pendulum swing and what it may look like. The swing isn't always about extremes in behavior either. It's about extremes in energy and intent. So I'm going to go through this pendulum of healing, and we all know it isn't healing. It isn't linear. So I'm going to give some examples of what our old patterns look like, how we may go to the other side, and then finally finding the middle. Old patterns will be called the survival mode, which is doing what you had to do. The other side of the pendulum is going to be called the protection mode. This is doing what you need to do. And then the middle, the balancing space, is going to be the empowerment mode. This is doing what's right for you. So I'm going to share some real life examples of what that may look like in your life. So let's just talk about boundaries, for example. In survival mode, that would be saying yes when you wanted to say no, just to avoid conflict. On the other side of the pendulum, the protection mode is when you start saying no to everything because you're just done being used. You're like, anytime I say yes, it was harmful, it was painful, so I'm just going to start saying no to everything. But then we go to the empowerment mode, which is saying no when needed and yes when it aligns with your values, without guilt or fear. It's made with confidence. So confidence is key here to get into the empowerment phase. But again, sometimes you'll go back and forth until you find that middle ground. The next one I'm going to talk about is communication. So in survival mode, you typically silence yourself to stay safe. So, you choose that quiet because speaking up has led to either punishment or conflict or harm. And it's scary to speak up. But then you might go to the other side of the protection mode, which is speaking harshly or with zero filter to prove that you won't be silenced again. And I will say that sometimes this goes the opposite. Sometimes in survival mode, people will speak harshly or be aggressive to prove themselves. And then in the protection mode, they'll go to silencing themselves. So this could be swapped either way. I think I've gone back and forth within my life on these. But the empowerment mode, which is the middle ground, is going to be speaking up with honesty and steadiness, even knowing others may not like it, because your truth is no longer dependent on their reaction. Again, it's about confidence and having the wisdom to know what is safe and what isn't. But again, we may not get to this place until we experience both extremes. The next one is going to be emotional space. So the survival mode looks like absorbing everyone else's emotions and neglecting your own. Protection mode, which is the other side, would be shutting down emotionally to keep from being pulled back in. So it's doing the complete opposite. The empowerment mode is feeling your emotions without being consumed by them. It's empathy with boundaries. So this one took me a while to unravel, and I definitely went from one extreme to the other. But by doing the work we do, I've really been able to find that middle ground of not taking on others' emotions to where I neglect myself. I have empathy with boundaries, but it's challenging. Sometimes you have to go to one extreme to the other in order to find that middle ground, because you won't know until you try something different. The next one is going to be validation. So survival mode will look like constantly defending yourself to be understood. The other side of that, protection mode, is going to be refusing to explain anything, even when clarity would help. So then you just kind of shut down at that point. Empowerment phase, the empowerment mode is knowing that your truth stands on its own and explaining when it serves connection, not when it costs your peace. So there's a difference in energy. Your situation might look like when someone misunderstands you. In survival mode, it's like, no, let me explain. That's not what I meant. You might panic, you might get defensive. The empowerment mode is going to say, I can clarify if it helps, but I know where I stand. It's very calm. It's grounded. Again, it's with confidence. Another situation would be when someone twists your words. In survival mode, you might say, I need to fix this right now. And then empowerment mode might be, their interpretation doesn't define my integrity. So again, it's about confidence and being calm and grounded. Another situation might be when conflict arises. In survival mode, it's like, if I explain better, maybe we'll be okay. I just need to explain. But in the empowerment mode, it's like, if we both want connection, we'll meet in the middle. We'll be able to have this conversation. And if not, I'll just keep my peace. Again, it's all based on that confidence. Let's go into conflict real quick. In survival mode, avoiding conflict or placating to restore harmony might be what you do. You've lived in environments where disagreement equaled danger, emotionally and or physically. So you learned to appease, to downplay, or to over apologize just to keep the peace. It might look like saying you're right just to end the argument, apologizing for things that weren't your fault, smoothing or trying to smooth things over before the other person gets angry, swallowing your needs to keep the relationship intact, believing that if there's conflict, something must be wrong with you. That's what a lot of people will do in survival mode during conflict. But during protection mode, you might do the total opposite. So you cut people off, or you walk out in mid conversation. And once you've spent years being dismissed, the moment you feel conflict rising, your body says, not this again. You start to armor up, you leave, you shut it down before anyone else can hurt you. So it might look like hanging up, walking out, blocking people mid-argument, refusing to revisit topics that feel too activating, seeing every disagreement as proof that the person isn't safe, feeling proud of your zero tolerance stance, but noticing the loneliness that follows. This energy is self-protective. If I disengage first, I can't be hurt. So the empowerment mode, the middle ground, is knowing when to engage, when to pause, and how to repair without abandoning yourself. So you've learned that conflict isn't inherently unsafe. It's a natural part of connection. You can stay present. You can listen. You can hold your truth without shrinking or exploding. It might look like saying, this conversation matters, but I need a break to calm down. Let's come back to it. Or holding boundaries around tone or respect without withdrawing completely, or allowing discomfort without rushing to fix or run from it. So this conflict information that I'm discussing is in a somewhat of a healthy-ish relationship. I want to talk about conflict in the context of abuse because there are some similarities, but there's also a big difference. So let's get into that. In survival mode, you might avoid conflict or placate to restore harmony. Very similar to what I said before. When someone is in when someone is abusive, conflict isn't just two people disagreeing. It's one person using fear, manipulation, or control to dominate the other. So you adapt to survive. You do whatever it takes to avoid that escalation. And it might look like apologizing to calm them down, even when you've done nothing wrong, or minimizing what happened just to keep the peace, or monitoring your tone, your face, even your breathing, constantly scanning for danger, agreeing just to prevent punishment or emotional blowback. So the energy here is survival. Is if I keep them calm, I'm going to stay safe. The protection mode to the other side is going no contact, leaving abruptly, cutting ties completely, which this is not an overreaction. This is self-preservation. You've learned that engaging only fuels more harm, and that trying to resolve things with someone abusive keeps you stuck in the same cycle. This might look like blocking their number, their emails, social media, refusing to meet or talk, stopping the pattern of responding to baiting or guilt trips, recognizing that disengagement isn't cruel, it's safe. So the energy here is protective. I'm no longer negotiating with someone who benefits from my pain. Here's where the empowerment mode comes in, which is slightly different than what I discussed earlier. Staying no contact or maintaining firm boundaries without guilt or self-doubt. Empowerment here doesn't mean re-engaging. It means learning to trust that protecting yourself is not unkind. It's necessary. You no longer question whether you're overreacting. You understand that some relationships just can't be repaired, and peace sometimes requires distance. This might look like feeling the urge to respond, but choosing silence. It's rejecting the belief that forgiveness requires access. Building new systems of safety, speaking the truth about what happened without trying to convince anyone to believe you, holding compassion for yourself while releasing responsibility for their growth. The energy here is freedom. It's I don't owe access to anyone who's proven unsafe. So that's where communication or conflict, differ when it comes to certain relationships. So the next one I'm going to talk about is detachment. So in survival mode, staying connected even when it hurt because leaving felt impossible. That's what it might look like. The protection on the other side is cutting off everyone who triggers you. And then the empowerment, the middle ground mode, is going to be releasing what's unhealthy while staying open to genuine connection. It's basically trusting yourself to know the difference in who is safe and who is not. It's about the confidence. The last one I wanted to touch on, there's a lot, but I'm just going to touch on the last one, which is self-expression. So in survival mode, you might hide your opinions or your desires, your wants, to keep them comfortable. But in the protection mode on the other side, you might announce every opinion loudly to prove that you matter. And then you go to the middle ground of empowerment, which is expressing yourself authentically without needing to be louder than before. You're just being real. So I've been through and currently go through the pendulum swing within a lot of these categories. It isn't going to be the same for everyone. You may be in the empowerment phase on some categories, the protection phase in others, and the empowerment phase in others. It's not going to look the same for each category. So before I wrap this up, I want to talk about something that matters more than anything when it comes to the pendulum swing, and that is your intentions. Your intention is what defines the energy behind your actions, because two people can do the exact same thing. They can raise their voice, they can walk away, they can say no, and one can do it from control while the other does it from clarity and self-respect. That's why the pendulum can feel really confusing, because you start setting boundaries, you start speaking up, or you're saying what's true for you, and suddenly you're wondering, am I being cruel, or am I just finally done being quiet? Here's the difference. If your intention is to protect yourself or create peace, even if it comes out messy, that's healing. If your intention is to punish, dominate, or make someone feel small, that's harm. It's okay if you don't always get it perfect. Most of us won't. What matters is that you stay honest with yourself about why you're saying what you're saying or doing what you're doing. Use your intentions and your values as a guideline and give yourself some compassion when you feel you've gone too far to the other side. Sometimes it's necessary, but it's what you do with it that truly matters. So if you've noticed this pendulum swing in your own healing or your own life, from silence to shouting, or sometimes it's the other way around where you're shouting in survival mode and then staying silent in protection mode, please know this. You're not broken And you're not turning into the person you feared becoming. You're recalibrating. That swing is what happens when your voice comes back after years of being silenced. Sometimes it comes out messy. Sometimes it's louder than you mean for it to be. Sometimes it feels like too much. But that doesn't make you harmful. It makes you human. What matters isn't perfection, it's reflection. Can you circle back and own it when you've gone too far? Can you tell the difference between protecting yourself and proving yourself? Can you keep your edge without losing your empathy? That's growth. That's empowerment. You don't have to get it right all the time. You just have to stay honest enough to notice when it's time to adjust. So if you're swinging right now, don't shame the swing. Just pay attention to where it's trying to take you. Eventually, the pendulum settles in the middle. But sometimes we have to go to the extreme opposite to find ourselves in the middle. We won't know what to do unless we do something different than what we were doing before, even if it's uncomfortable. Eventually, you're going to find your way to the middle. So that's all I have for this week, guys. Thank you for being here. Until next time, I'm Paige. Bye.